It should be starting any second.
Righty.
Yep.
There. Yep. See it now.
You're up, Dave.
Okay. Thank you. Well, hey, thank you everyone for joining the Bales Informative Fridays. This is the third one of the month of October. We have one more left, and today's topic is Infor HR Talent Custom Group Basics. If you could go to the next slide. So just a quick minute here on who Bales is. Bales is the ERP Infor team for a company called Nordic Consulting. Nordic is a global healthcare IT consulting firm based in Madison, Wisconsin. Bales became a part of that team 2 years ago. It's provided us with a lot of opportunity to really enhance how we deliver to our customers. Through Nordic, our customers can have access with process improvement, rev cycle, managed services, and implementations for Epic, Cerner, and Meditech. That combined with Bales' capabilities around delivering the Infor healthcare platform for ERP, workforce management, and interoperability with the Cloverleaf tool really provide our customers with a lot of capabilities to do a full implementation of everything that they need to support their organization. The Bales team has been a partner in the Infor ecosystem since the mid-90s, and the average tenure of our consultants is over 15 years. So we have an extremely senior team that really understands the products and understands what it's like for you to be a customer in the Lawson Infor world. With that, and to show that how great our team is, I'm going to turn it over to Niki and let her walk you through our presentation today. Thanks again for joining, and hope you enjoy the session.
Great, thanks, Dave. So the topic today obviously is basic custom group. We've got a lot of tips and tricks at the end. My name is Niki Kimball. I'm the HCM practice manager for Bales & Associates. I will be walking you through the presentation. Kellie will be monitoring the chat, and Mark will be my expert in the background helping me along the way. So Kellie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everybody, or morning, depending where you are. Kellie Gilbert. I am the Director of Service. I forgot what I was. Director of Service Delivery here at Bales. I work closely with Mark and Niki. I've been in the Infor practice for about 20-something odd years, we'll just say, and started on version 6 and worked up through here. Just happy to be here with y'all today. Mark?
Good morning, Mark Williams, HCM Solution Architect. I also work with Kellie and Niki. I've been in this space for about 20 years also, and also worked across a couple of different systems. Glad to be here and look forward to the presentation.
Great, thank you guys. First of all, the official disclaimer, we're going to put this on YouTube, so we have to make sure everybody understands that the information provided in this presentation is just guidance. It's information related that can help you. It's contained in the presentation for general information purposes only. So it is not the end all be all of all the information, but we just want to share with you today. So a couple of things. Kellie will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions along the way, just type them in there. She'll interrupt me as needed. And Mark will be helping me with some of those questions as well. At the end of this presentation, everybody will get a copy of this. There's a lot of good information packed in here, so don't worry about taking notes or anything. You know, we'll provide this presentation to you after today. So I'll just jump right in. Obviously, what are custom groups? They're used by the HR talent application all over the place to group employees that can be processed together or reported together. It's just a way to gather folks in a group so it can be used by other functionality. It used to be in S3. I'm going to refer to that every once in a while. Back in Lawson, it's called Eligibility Groups. They're called custom groups, but the employee groups are what was back in S3. So here's just a quick shot of the custom group setup form. The top, the name and the description, We always recommend that you use the first few letters to describe what you're using it for. In this case, it's EEO. For benefit groups, we like to use it as to start with BN or the word benefit, because you have a little more room here in the description and the group name. Effective date, whatever your system effective date is, most clients use 1/1/1950. Business class. Business class is the table or where the data is from. This is specific to the group you're creating, and for benefits and absence, and it's usually work assignment. For the EEO group, it's based on the employee table, right, or business class. And we'll get into that more on how to determine what that should be. The conditioned area is a active criteria or the logic that defines the employee group. Here's a basic example. We'll show you a little more complicated criteria later on. And custom group subjects. This is just a way to isolate these custom groups into for places that to be viewable in the places that you need them. So if you use this for EOs, if you put the custom group subject in for EO establishment, it should only show up on the drop down for EO establishment. You won't see any of the others. It's easier here, so you can only see what's relevant to the needs of the drop down of the area that you're working in. So that's a big improvement. We'll get into all these details as well. Let me scroll down. Business class, have the logic only for custom groups created with employees, supervisor, work assignment, job application, business classes. They're usually focused on those main ones. I rarely see them outside of that. Employee time record does have that business class is being used now by pay codes, or because the shift tables are based on eligibility groups. Conditions. This is where you say, here's the logic of what employee belongs in this group. It uses LPLs or landmark pattern language to personalize or configure the landmark application. So that's the basis of the logic in the criteria. It's used in config console, but it's the builder helps us navigate above that and not have to know that language very, very well. We'll show you examples of that. We talked about custom group subject. Oops, jumping around, sorry. This is the context in which the custom group will be used. Most custom group subjects include the string group. So when you look up the custom group subject, you'll see group in there. But I'll show you a logic on how to determine what it should be. There is some in the documentation as well, and I'll show you that location. How are they used? They're used all over the place. All the users, administrators, generalists, comp analysis can use it within their respective spaces. Benefits uses custom groups very heavily, as long as absence as well. To determine eligibility, cost, entry, you can use different groups for all those different roles. And absence uses them for eligibility as well. Performance appraisals can be based on a custom group, which is nice. Compensation uses them to determine eligibility for incentive compensation and calculates budgets for comp awarding. Transition management can also use them for eligibility for both programs and tasks. And I know, Mark, that you had did you have more to say about that? How that can be used over there?
Yeah, in transition management, you can use it at either the program level or the task level. So if you want to just manage one program and have, let's say, 30 tasks in there, well, you're going to have a variety of levels of employees go through the program. So if there's certain things for just entry-level employees, you would make that part of the eligibility group. If it's just for executives, you'd make that part of the eligibility group. But you only have to maintain one program. You don't have to maintain a separate one for administrative staff, middle management, executives. And it lets you to be a little bit more concise, and also as you assign it, it makes it a lot easier to maintain it. Make sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
Makes sense to me.
Great. All right, getting started. When you're starting to create a group, we talked about this, include the what module you're going to be using it for, or what function you're going to be using it for in the description. In this case, the business class is employee and the custom group subject is HCM EO1. You'll see it in the drop down. A lot of times you can just search for the custom group subjects. If it's, it's EO, then you could just put that in the drop down, but I'll show you how to trick the system into telling you what it should be here in a minute. So on Infor Docs, there is inside a lot of the setup for these, especially when it's a report or a list. It says in the HR talent setup, there's a path here where you can actually find what the custom group should be. And there's a hint here. It says a group defined with this subject can be selected as a group of employees. This is a hint as to it's the employee business class, but it doesn't straight out tell you, right? You can't, it doesn't, in the documentation, it doesn't explain what the business class should be. But when it comes to the business class, so if you're on the form that you need the eligibility group for, you can do a define there. So if you go to edit mode, you can do a create or you can do a define, and then it'll automatically populate that business class. So kind of a cheater way to find out what the business class should be is go, where do I need it? And then access custom groups from that form, and it'll tell you what that business class should be. All right. Here's some examples of business class and how they're used with each module. Employee and work business classes are naturally related. So fields for both can be included in the custom group, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. There's an example down below. So when you're creating it, if you know the field that you want, if you know you want all employees, you can actually just type relationship to org equals, and then you create a quote. When you're having a literal, when it's actually, it has to be the exact value, and put the employee. And after you do that, it automatically changes the color when you're typing. And then you put an and, you say employee and active. That's a really basic group. So you can just type that out. Pretty simple. There is options to use or and. So you could say employee or consultant or contractor if you wanted everybody in that group. But here you're doing an and because you want both values. Finding field names, just to help you along here, there is a way, I think all of us know this, Control-Shift-Click, and that is the left click of your mouse, and that actually, you put your cursor in a field and you'll be able to get the information from that field name, so you know what to type in. A lot of times you got to check spelling because if it doesn't recognize it, there's no spell check in there, so I get caught in that a lot. Sometimes you will get errors when you're creating the groups, especially when you're typing them manually. Always look for the little red squiggly, because that's where it'll show invalid parameters at the bottom or invalid statement, but it doesn't always tell you what it is. So to always look for the little red in the criteria, and that'll save you. In this case, there's extra spaces and I just had to delete back. So once you save is when the text changes color, but that's a good thing. So a lot of the and ors change to blue, and if it's a literal value, then it changes to this reddish orange here. And it says type the field exactly, so all in caps. That's for the values. It likes to have the exact values because employee on the relationship to org is actually all in caps, so it likes to have it exact. Okay, adding business classes. Let's see. Okay, so here's an example of what it looks like. So you're starting with the employee business class, and you want to have it link it to or pull information in from a different business class. In this case, I used primary work assignment, and that's always recommended, not just work assignment, because you can pull up work assignment, but use primary because that way you'll make sure it's their actual first one, their primary. If you have multiple, this will pull right from the first one. So all you have to do is type the the business class first and then dot and then the field name. It's pretty easy. You can see that parentheses were put around this. Parentheses are really important to make sure you're grouping things correctly. And this could use some more parentheses. If I was typing this out, or I would probably put more parentheses to group this and then more to so it works without them, but sometimes it's easier in your brain to put the parentheses around what you want. So using the builder, so that was kind of typing it out. Obviously, these are really basic. This is not getting into the complicated groups. Just wanted to show everybody how to work on these. So if you want to use the condition builder, it brings up this screen, and then you can type the field name in case you don't know it. If you're starting from scratch and you just want to know, and so I just typed relationship 2, and then I can select this, but it also brings up all the rest too. So when you select it here, you can put the condition as well. So it would be equal to, and then this is where that literal, and I didn't put it here, but this is where that literal button comes in. So if I want it to be in relationship to or equals employee, in here I would select the field, put the condition equal to, but then I would click the literal button, and then it would say it has to be this exactly. So I would just type the word employee in there. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Righty. So you can also, if you do not know the exact name, click on the search icon. Okay, enter the business class. So you can in that builder, you can this fields from drop down. You can actually pick the business class if it's other than your main one that's on the group. You can pick the business class and then search that business class alone, which is really nice. And I just put work assignment, but I should be putting primary. But that way you can limit the search to the table that you're looking for and not wide open, because sometimes when you just start typing, it could bring up all kinds of stuff from all kinds of tables. If you put search fields from and pick the business class, it makes the search a lot easier. And this logic you can even use in personalizing lists as well. It's the exact same logic. If you want to add fields to any list, you can use this same builder type functionality. All right. So here, okay, I got ahead of myself. So this is what it would look like in the end if you click literal, and then it would be equal to employee. So that would look the same as what I had built by hand, just typed out. So this literal checkbox is important, because if you type it in first and then click literal, it blanks it out. I always hate that. So you got to make sure you.
I'm sorry, Nikki, we have a question.
Okay.
What happens if you don't use the literal checkbox? Do you just get everybody?
Oh, that's a good question.
I know, right?
It actually. Oh, so it won't put quotes around it is the only thing I can think of. So it might error out when you try and save the query.
Mark, do you know?
It depends on what type of field you're doing. So if you just say relationship equal to and you save it, even though you click literal, it's just going to show blank and it's going to show error. It's going to look for a value in the system. So sometimes it's a little bit different how you write these. So if you say pay rate type, and you just want people their annual salary, you wouldn't type in literal value. You would just put in pay rate type dot annual salary, because that's a delivered field within the system. So you can do it different ways, but I think if you don't have anything in there, you're going to get an error.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you. Great question.
Yes, thank you. All right. So to add another, you can keep on adding, right? Where's that button? Build another. If you click on the build another, that'll add another line. And this is the same group I built by hand. So relationship status is equal. So the key here, the difference here is you got to keep an eye on this match, and this is all or any. So the all is equal to and any is equal to or. That's the only thing that you got to keep an eye on. as you're adding, if you build another logic within this builder. But you'll see it. If you build another and it has that and, you can go back and change it to any, or if you want it to be or. So that's some nice functionality. All right. If you use the builder, it looks the same thing, right? It looks, except it automatically put those parentheses around it. And like I said, I tend to put more parentheses than less, because it as you build your conditions and you build out the statements, the more you have, the better you can visually see what is grouped together. All right, so adding a business class using builder. So this is where you would type in work assignment. The builder uses and find tables and fields here, so you can actually find, you can look for work assignment first, or you, so if you're looking for a different business class, you can type that in and then it will, and then dot, and then the field. So here you can enter primary work assignment. And you can see, I can't see the whole thing, but I don't, let's see, let me take it one more step. I put too many things in here, but so this is where you would start. You would just type out the second business class you want, and then type the fields after that. So you can see how it's smart typing. So as soon as I type it up, it brings up the fields. Sometimes you have to expand this or scroll over to see what fields you want, but it'll bring up everything on that second business class. Just make sure to use the dot after the business class to find the field name. And when you're looking at these conditions, here's the conditions that you can use. So equal to, not equal to, entered, not entered. So if it's blank, you would say not entered, which is nice, a new feature. Greater than or equal to. And then there's others, depending on the field. If you can have, if it's like, you can search for like, and then Boolean fields have true or false options. So you have to make sure that you can say, this is eligible for rehire, for example, equals true. So you would need to have a state here. And depending on the field that you're populating it with, it'll give you different values, those conditions. Select condition of equal to enter a field value. Showed you that already. Click literal first or for blank out, right? And then when you hit save at the end of this builder, it'll pop up here and it'll say, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to overwrite the existing condition, or do you want to append to it? And with me, I'm usually appending. I'm just saying, okay, I got the basics. Now let me add on pieces. If you say overwrite, it'll blank out everything that you have on the screen before. And then in this case, we want to append. So you can see here what it did. And I think that literal just puts those quotes there. So this would not be happy condition if you didn't say literal. So it plopped the ands in between and it put the parentheses around it here. And you can see here how there's a double parentheses enclosing it all. You can still manually edit this if you want to. If you want to say HR org equals this, or primary work assignment .org HR organization equals 400, you could put that in here. You could type it right in here as well. There's been recent updates to this in the last, I don't know, last year or so. So you got to be very careful where your cursor is when you start typing. It jumps around a little bit. So just be careful. Make sure you know where you are. It highlights it in blue where you are, but sometimes if you try and tab, it'll jump you somewhere else. So you just be very conscious of where your cursor is. So it's easy to add other conditions for the same fields. Like I just said, 2 things to remember though is make sure you're using your and or, and make sure you have the parentheses all lined up. That's usually what kind of errors I get, is I don't either have enough or matching parentheses when I try and save. All right, let's talk about custom group subjects, and I'm going to take a breath here. Everybody doing okay? No more questions out there?
Not yet, ma'am.
All righty, we're learning. Okay. So how to find business class subjects. I talked about this, how to find the business class, but here's how to find the custom group business subjects. There's a listing, usually within this example is from HR Talent, from the custom groups that are required for this specific information. And usually in those user guides, they do sit there in the same location. So they're all spread out. It's just where you need them. So look up the form you're on in Infor Docs, and then you should be able to find the custom group business subjects. Adding custom group subjects, just make sure you add a custom group at the same time. You'll get really frustrated if you add the group and then forget the business subjects because you go back to your other form and you can't see it in the drop down, and then that's when you know you have the wrong custom group or are missing it, or you have the wrong one in there. Always use the 1/150 or your specific effective date, and then all you have to do is you have to go back to the group. So make sure to do it at the same time. Easy breezy. All right. So how does the preview work? So at any time while you're creating your group, you can preview to see who's in it. So it brings up, this always confuses me, but it finally clicked in. So preview options, what do you select in that list? So you always select the exact same business class that your custom group is based on. And the reason why is because if you have logic in your custom group and you pick, so say you have anybody who has an active work assignment, right? If you then in this list name pick active only to check preview active work assignments, you're not checking your employee group. You're already limiting the list by what you select. So always make them equal, and that way you know you're checking the conditions of your custom group. Selecting the list name, custom group, right? Based on that group, make sure you don't have your logic. So I just talked through the slide. So this gives you the logic on why to use the exact same list as your business class on the group. It'll bring up here a list of the custom groups will appear. You can sort, search, personalize this list. It's really great because that way you can validate everything. If you said, I only want active people, you can put relationship to org in here and check it and make sure. The search hasn't been working recently. I've been having trouble with this, but I definitely do the personalized list to validate it. All right. I'm going to take a breath. Tips and tricks. This is a lot of good information about how to get around stuff, how to use the system, what lessons learned, and Kelly and Mark jump in if there's anything on here that you have any helpful tips with as well. Delivered groups. These are the ones that are delivered, and I don't think you can modify them. Mark, yeah, I asked. These groups cannot be modified. So these are delivered for a specific intent.
Correct.
Benefit groups. When it comes to benefit groups, there's one more step. You have to actually create the custom group, and then you have to identify it as a benefit group. But while you're doing that, there's an action here. So you make them active, and then you want to make sure you make them dynamic. There was a question that came earlier from social media about how to make sure employee groups or custom groups stay up to date. So if you have this async action set as dynamic, they will always be up to date. If you have it as saved, then you can choose when you update it. You can kind of be the gatekeeper of when people enter the employee group. But Infor and we recommend that it stays dynamic, and that way there's no maintenance. If you do have it as saved, you can see when it was last refreshed as well. All right, so You can also, in benefits, there's some nice functionality that you can validate who's in the groups. You can check benefit group membership, and that way you can select the group and it shows who's in it down below, which is nice when you're trying to troubleshoot. You can do it group by resource, so it shows all the benefit groups an employee is in, so you can do it the other way. So you do by group who's in the group, and then you can say, here's the employee, here's what groups they're in. So it's a nice validation tool when you're trying to figure out why they're not eligible for a plan or why they dropped out. Absence group. So in absence, there's also another step to take as well. So you have to make them eligibility groups here on the plan setup. So it's just linking the plan, linking the custom group and calling it an eligibility group. I think you can put a different description into for both the benefits and the absence groups, but I like to keep them the same. It keeps things less complicated. So here, benefits and absence groups are based on work assignment. This means that the employee must have an active work assignment to be eligible for a plan. So the difference between being terminated and then having an inactive work assignment, you got to keep an eye on that, what your rules are. So so you know that they can get their last accrual in absence, or have that last check have the benefit deductions. So just keep an eye on your rules and make sure that they're still active after they're terminated, to make sure that the last things can be done. And then also in payroll, you have to have an active work assignment, so to get that last paycheck as well. Okay. Make sure criteria is final before enrolling in plans. This tip and trick comes from me directly. I enrolled everybody, did a mass enrollment. I got everybody in my absence plan. And then I ended up changing the group criteria. And it was not fun trying to figure, because I get lots of errors saying the employee was never eligible for the group. So always make sure your criteria is final before you enroll people in benefits and absence. That's just a lesson learned from me. Not fun cleanup on that. Position and job code, you can use levels and types in group criteria, which is, it comes in really handy. One of my clients uses a job level of manager for one of their absence plans. You can use those it's instead of saying these 10 job codes or these 100 potentially job codes, if you put a job level or on the position as well, it helps you keep track of it better than putting every single job code that you have to in here, this job code and this job code. So if you put a flag, you can use the levels or types as long as they're not being used by compensation, because those are a lot in the compensation module. Or you can use a user field. I recently had an org unit user field that grouped because they didn't, it was mismatched. There wasn't anybody who was in this level or this level for that org unit. It was, I don't want to say it was random, but it wasn't trackable based on other fields. So we created a user field and we included that in the group, which is really helpful. You can also use short descriptions. I learned this when converting in testing. So if in different rounds of testing, they may have different Infor user job codes, right? Or the Infor code. So I would have to come out and change my job code group every time. So I said, forget this. I actually am going for the short description, so I don't have to change it every time for testing. Field values. So this is where the screen may show, in this case, it shows hourly or salary, annual salary, but behind the scenes on the tables, it actually is the value of 1 or 2. And here it's hourly is 1, annual salary is 2, and monthly salary is 3. So the way to figure that out Let's go look at that field, do the control shift click like we showed before, and then in the show more, this is the screenshot from that show more where it shows the values. That's helpful in Spreadsheet Designer as well.
Definitely, it's helpful when you're doing uploads.
Yes. Yep. Yep. All right. So we recently, one of our gurus was able to figure out how to delete with ISD. So when it comes to custom groups, there's only an active and inactive flag. There's no way to delete an employee group on the screen. But if you use ISD, this is a trick that one of our consultants has figured out. And why would you ever want to delete employee group? If it's created in your pristine or production area and it changed, or you won't be using it, you just want to get rid of it completely. Here's the instructions on how to do it. Query the group, filter you want to delete, change the used flag from true to false, and change the active to false if needed. Run the upload and update the value to change these fields. And then you can upload using delete. So first you have to make them inactive, then you can delete them. But you cannot do this on the screen. So this is a great little tidbit to keep in your back pocket.
I'd be very wary of doing that if you've used it in your actual transactions, though, because you will get
Okay.
an error. But
Good
if you're
point.
doing testing and you said that you loaded 20 groups and you don't need, then that's perfectly what I would do. But if that use flag is flipped, that means that there's records in the database. So anyways, just kind of a note on that one.
Great, thank you. Limitations, and I say this because it makes me very sad. You cannot do a group within a group. You can't exclude like you could before. That's the one big limitation that I found. But there's ways around it because copying and pasting another group is pretty easy when it comes to, because then you can just do is not like, or if you want to include it to the equal to. High level recommendations when it comes to groups, keep the groups exclusive to modules. That's why we recommend putting the 2 or 3 letter modules or the description in the name, because you want it used just by that one module. The reason is if ever the criteria change, so say you're using it for benefits and absence for all active employees, say, well, benefits down the road changes to include part-time, but absence doesn't change. You want to make sure you have 2 separate groups to maintain the 2 separate rules, because if you change it, you could be changing the other modules eligibility. Try not to use employee numbers. I know there's always exceptions, but use user fields and this is employee, I mean, even org units, even job codes, try user fields or other different fields available on that form. Like I said, with jobs, you can use levels, positions levels, anything, but try to keep it as generic as possible instead of very specific. Custom groups can be viewed and used by other modules, but we recommend module exclusivity. This is an example of how parentheses are important. You can stare at this for 10 minutes and say, I know I put the parentheses in there, but it'll tell you. It won't tell you where, but it'll tell you that you need another parentheses to finish that out.
Niki,
Mm-hmm.
We have a comment and I should have saw this earlier. Sorry about that. But doesn't the subject field allow for this as well, about telling what time of group it is versus using the 2 letters in the name? Like if it's for benefits.
The custom group, yes. The custom group,
yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Sorry.
But oh yes, absolutely. See, so definitely, But you can add 2 different custom groups if you want. I mean, custom subjects, but you wouldn't. But yes, that's a good point. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No worries. So here's one where just an example of where it's a lot of organization units. I did fix this one to give this org unit a user field, so I could just flag the org unit itself instead of I'm trying to do this manually, but here's an example. You can actually cut and paste this into Word, edit it in Word. So if you're doing the same thing over and over again, so that way you can just like cut or HR organization equals this and then cut it and paste it and change it. So it's easy to do in Word. But I think Mark uses Notepad as well, right?
Yeah, when you're in doing like compensation, let's say, for example, and you calculate a awarding budget for the entire company, you've got probably 10,000 employees that are going to get an awarding budget. You're going to have a couple that are going to err out. It might be that they're missing a pay rate or something's wrong on their work assignment, and you're going to have errors to work through. So you might have 5, you might have 10, you might have 20. Instead of having to type into each individual employee, what you can do is simply export the employee list to Excel, transpose it, and then keep in CSV or save as text, open it up in Notepad, and then you're just doing a quick find and replace of the comma with what you see on the screen there. And you don't want to go back and just rerun the whole group, because then what's going to show in your error report, let's say it's 10,000 employees and you got 20 people that erred out, you rerun the whole group to get those 20 employees in, you're going to get 10,000 errors that say record already exists. So you wouldn't want to use employees when you're just initially launching them, like in calculating budgets, but it's great for when you have to deal with errors, so you don't put your error report, hundreds of thousands of lines long because you had to rerun the group to get those employees back into the program. Does that make sense? So if it was missing pay rates, you went back and created the pay rate on the work assignment. You don't want to rerun the group that they were supposed to be in. It will give you a whole list and say all of them already exist.
Oh, right. Yep.
So if you just do it for these employees that aired out because they're missing pay rate or something else on their work, maybe they're missing FTE, something of that nature, then you're just kind of running it for just this group of employees, and it keeps your error report that's delivered very brief.
Yep. Good idea. Yep. Thanks, Mark. So here's some of the questions we did get ahead of time. We use custom groups, but we want to know if they work when resources fall in and out. We want to know how they work when resources fall in and out of them. It seems they do not work as easily as the S3 side, and we're having refresh membership all the time. So this is where that dynamic setting on the benefit group comes in handy. So you wouldn't have to do the refresh. So hopefully that'll resolve your problem.
And I'd add, if you're doing compensation and you got, let's say, incentive programs, you're going to run an action called recalculate, and it's going to go look and see if somebody's fallen out. So you want them to fall out because they're no longer eligible.
Agreed. So, same with absence. Yep, you'll do that recalculate, and they'll funnel in and out. Yep, good point. Okay, this was a question that came in, and I had to ask the tech folks, have you been able to leverage custom group definitions for the sending of and filtering smart notes or IPA triggers? And the answer was no, they have not used that. We've only ever used custom configuration set and create a variable that contains the email addresses of the recipients. That's the only thing that they've ever done. And I will follow up to see if there's any more information on that, but that's all I heard back. So this one we got, so how does the effective date of the custom group work? And again, this is where we always recommend the 1/1/1950 or your client or customer back date. It must predate the employees to be all inclusive. You want to make sure you're getting them all at the right time. I'm going to admit every once in a while I'll accidentally hit save, but I'll go back and save it again for 1/1/1950.
Can I just say something real quick about that date?
Of course.
If you guys ever get the error message or unit H something, whatever, doesn't exist, check your dates. Because whenever you go try to look at something or change something or whatever, it's usually a date issue. That's just dates in general. Sorry,
Yep.
Niki, but
absolutely.
It kills me.
Thank you. I actually got through that faster than I thought. So any
I know
any
you
more
did great.
questions?
You
Whew,
have 13 minutes left, Nikki.
I need a drink of water here. Any more questions? Anything?
Nothing in the chat, ma'am.
I think we covered a lot. Like I said, we'll send this out to everybody, so you have it. I think.
Oh, is that me? I'm ready.
I think so. Yep. It's all
Okay,
you.
great. First of all, thank you all for your time today. Nikki and Mark, great presentation. But just so you know, we do have one session left next weekend, next Friday. I wish it was weekend, October 28th at 1 o'clock, which is the difference between Infor Microsoft add-ins and Infor Spreadsheet Designer. Riveting. And it's Arden, who is our finance practice leader. And we like to say our all-out Excel guru, wizard, king, and everything. And you'll find him very entertaining. Please, we'd love to have you come. Next. Our next that next Friday is going to end this quarter's Informative Friday sessions. The next session will be in February of 2023. I don't believe I'm saying that number already,
That's
but
crazy.
I know, right? Stay tuned. A lot of great topics coming out in February. Also, just so you know, we do offer coffee with consultants. So if you have a question, then you want to see a demo or you want to talk about something, we're happy to help and set you on the right path. We are doing what we call coffee with consultants. We give you a complimentary half-hour session with one of our experienced consultants. Visit www.balesllc.com and send us an email through our website by selecting Reach Us. And we will reach back out to you and set up a time to meet with someone in your specialty. And thank you all. Great job, Nikki and Mark. And I can't believe you did 66 slides in 50 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a phenomenal weekend. Bye.
Bye.